Is it working? Are we here?
Yep.
It's happening. All right. Lit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the live stream podcast. Today, oh man, today we have a treat. This is definitely something that's been a long time coming, a long time in the making. Over the years, in my YouTube career, I use that with quotation marks. I've met a lot of really awesome people. I've had the chance to talk with a lot of really awesome people, and there's also a certain category of people that I look up to for things that they do inside and outside of the hobby. And when I started this podcast, one of the goals was to provide you guys content to talk about candidly about things that were pet peeves of mine in the hobby, or even talk about certain things that kind of border the hobby, certain things outside of the hobby. And I wanted to bring on people that I thought could have interesting conversations and provide you content with some kind of value, not just for model trains, but just for topics in general. I think that a lot of the time in the hobby, we get caught up in, focusing on the train aspect, but not realizing that there are some fantastic people in this hobby that are an amazing resource to ask some questions for advice or things that don't include model trains. So today I want to bring on a very special guest. You already know who it is. You know what you came here for. You know what time it is, man. I have the legendary James Wright on the channel. James, how the heck are you, man?
Thanks for having me on. First of all, I love the positivity of your channel, and I am doing great right now.
I appreciate it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, James has been gracious enough to talk to us this weekend, to fill us in on a whole bunch. I got a bunch of questions I want to ask him. I'm gonna get right into it. James, I'm gonna tell you, man, I was super stoked when you confirmed that you were gonna be on. I was like, oh my god, I gotta tell it. Wait, no, I'm not gonna tell anybody yet. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait on it.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited to talk to you today, sir. So I want to start. Let's rewind the clock a little bit. Let's go back in time. I want to ask you about your early days when you first started your YouTube channel, when you first got everything going. When you first started the channel, like what was your intention?
Well, the very first videos, my intention was to show my cousin who had flown out to visit me in California, but he went back to Indiana, where we're both originally from.
Mm-hmm.
I was showing him the beginning stages of my layout because he had graciously got me into the hobby, showed me how to build the layout, built the layout with me there,
Mm-hmm.
and then flew back. So I was showing him, hey, I'm doing the scenery, I'm laying the track. It was easy track, but putting buildings down and kind of showing him the early stages of the layout. And then shortly after that, we're talking a few videos in, I was friends with a guy in California that did car reviews for CNET. And I was like, man, nobody does reviews on any like stuff. I literally searched like train review, HO train review, HO review, could not find a video of anybody reviewing the products like they do with cars. So shortly after that, I was like, let's do some videos compared to, I think one of my first reviews was a Rapido passenger car, and then it was comparing a couple of Athearn box cars. So I just dove right in and started doing that and mixing it in with, my journey in model railroading. Literally almost every minute of my model railroading journey is documented on YouTube on my channel.
Now, how exactly did you get into trains?
So, normal kid, 5-6 years old, loved trains, had a Tyco set that I think it was called the Chattanoogan or something, or the Chattanooga Choo Choo. But a lot of times it came out one time, and then my grandfather put it up above the refrigerator. That's on my dad's side. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, on my mom's side, my great-grandfather was taking us out trackside to see 1980s, mid to late 80s Norfolk Southern action through Indiana. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I was there for the 611. I know my cousin was. Mm-hmm. Those two were kind of the seeds. I even had a train logo on the right corner of my glasses when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. So I wear contacts now most of the time, so most of you guys don't know I have glasses, but yeah, a little train logo there. So put that aside. Obviously, it kind of faded out. It got older. I started liking, Nintendo, and faded out. Well, then in was it 2009?
Hmm.
My I got a job with NASA and the U2 program. So I was in charge of the spacesuit section that the NASA WB-57 high altitude reconnaissance aircraft wears, and the U-2 for the Air Force, the spy plane.
Hmm.
I was in charge of the section that handled all those suits. So my cousin got me a NASA switcher. It was an Athearn SW2, I believe,
Hmm.
switcher, two Bowser NASA hoppers, and an Athearn caboose with NASA logo on it. So I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? He mailed it out to me. He gave me a DCC controller. It was an Atlas 3-function DCC controller. It had the F0, F1, and F2. And I'm like, DCC, what? Computers? No, I don't know nothing about this. So I was like, hey, man, you want me to just fly you out here? You can spend some time. Show me what this is about. He thought I was just going to throw it on a shelf, a display shelf or something.
Yeah.
His mom was like, yeah, he's not going to be into this. Like, this is rare. But my OCD just kicked in and it started from there. And literally, like I said, the first few videos of having a layout up and running or on YouTube to this
I
day on
see.
my channel.
So that's the thing. I didn't actually know you were into trains when you were younger. I thought that it was always just kind of your cousin that got you into when you got older, but it seems like you had an interest when you were younger and then it died and then you kind of came back to it.
Yeah,
Um,
my grandparents primarily raised me, my dad a little bit. And
mhm,
they said if I was within an earshot of a train, I'd
mhm.
like, take me there. It was avid.
I was also raised by my grandparents and my mom, and I can tell you now, my grandfather, he like every weekend we would go out to the train yard. We had a van. I still have it. I'm gonna get it fixed up this year, but we had a old Ford Econoline. Every weekend he would pack me in there. We get Cheetos and pepperoni sticks, and we would go down to the train yard. We'd watch the switch engine, hook up all the cars, get the consists ready to go, and then they would back the units down onto the train and they would take out the yard. He's like, okay, we gotta go. And then we'd race down to the crossing gates. And before the train would get there, there was like a little tree that was next to the train track. So he'd drive and make a U-turn, be in the tree. We'd have the pepperoni sticks out. We'd just be sitting there waiting for the train to come down.
Wait a
And
minute.
then
So was the Cheetos and the pepperoni sticks to stop the train with your breath?
look, man, when you know, James, you know this, when you're raised by your grandparents, you acquire a unique taste for all sorts of different foods.
Yep. Yeah,
But
definitely
yeah,
have
yeah,
strange.
the train would show up and we would just get right. He'd make sure we were right at the front of the tracks. And man, I love that. I miss that.
Yeah.
But that's cool, man. That I didn't know your grandparents helped you with that as well, with your love of the hobby. That's neat.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's kind of in the back of your mind anytime you run a train, which I can't do much of at the moment, but
yeah.
it's like all of the history is with you every time you build a layout, run a train, enjoy switching or operations or whatever part of
Hmm.
model railroading you enjoy, like kit bashing.
Yeah. It's it's impossible not to think of, especially if you connect railroading with your grandparents, it's impossible not to think of them when you run a train. I just recently did a project where I did a sound install on a brass locomotive, and I found my grandfather's solder that he used to use when he was teaching me how to solder when I was a kid. I'm like, I got a piece of him in that train every time I run it. It's
Yeah,
neat. So let me ask you this question. How old were you when you started the YouTube channel in 2009?
that would have put me at 26.
Mm.
So 26 years old. Yeah.
So the same age I am now is
Uh,
what? Holy crap. I didn't know that either. Wow. Okay. So you were my age when you started the channel. That's wild.
yep.
So, okay. And so you've just been just going ever since then. So let me ask you this question. How do you feel the hobby has changed since those early days of YouTube back in 2009? Like, how is the hobby different now as compared to back then?
Well, definitely did not embrace social media. Still has a long way to go, in my opinion. But
Mhm.
I went to Bruce's train shop in Sacramento, which is a pretty big train shop. They had a parrot, like the bird in the back, uh,
Mhm.
and then they had all these different scales. And there's still blue box. It was like remnants of blue box going on then, so you could still build your own thing. But I was quickly spoiled. My first engine was Athearn, but my cousin had custom detailed that SW2, which was a blue box locomotive and caboose. The Bowser hoppers were ready to roll, and then the first locomotive I purchased was an Athearn Genesis F7. And so right out the gate, I was just spoiled, and I kind of wish I would have come up earlier and had an appreciation and a knowledge to do the kit or the building of the different kits that made the locomotives and rolling stock. But so that was the beginning of that era. Still very affordable prices. I was looking back at my first review like a couple of months ago, maybe, and I think the box cars were like $20 or something, Genesis box cars. So I think the prices have definitely taken off, but I haven't really studied how that compares to inflation or anything like that. But the ability to talk to modelers, regardless of going to train shows, we can do it live streams like we're doing here, is much improved. It really didn't exist then.
Right.
YouTube had only existed for a couple of years before it came along. The only other person I think on it, model railroad wise, that I paid any attention to was Al Mayo at the time. So there was quite a bit of long way to go in terms of technology and stuff. So now, fast forward, you've got manufacturers a little more social media prone. They still got a long way to go because one of my degrees emphasis is marketing, and it's just like it's frustrating to see what they do sometimes. But some of them are really on their A game, just in terms of getting their product words out, the announcements and such. So that's better. Being able to communicate with modelers is better. Prices have increased, which is kind of a con in my opinion, but
yeah,
you got to do what you got to do. If it's what you're interested in. Like my cousin always says, it's better than drugs and all the other bad stuff you could be in that have no value retention. So
let me ask you about your cousin real quick too. So did you grew up together? Like, were you really close?
Yeah, we were pretty close. Growing up young, we were really close. We kind of weren't as close a little later in life. I think there's not really a family rift, just kind of nothing between me and my cousin, but just the dynamics working around it. My grandmother, which is the one who took me around, my great grandfather, which was her father, she kind of preferred to go to certain cousins other than other cousins. So we didn't see them as frequently as I did my other cousins, but later in life, I realized who was really valuable in that, and it was my cousin that's in the trains. And I talk to him now, and I don't really talk to the other cousins as much. But so yeah, we grew up together. There's some, we'd come over for Sunday dinner pretty frequently too. So yeah, grew up. He had an influence of trains on with me as a younger as well. And we did stuff with my great grandfather going down to the tracks. So I've got a vlog called Origins that kind of shows the tracks we went down to, shows my great grandfather's back yard. Now my cousin, he's technically my second cousin because it's his grandfather, but my great grandfather. So we're only a couple age difference. It's just my parents had me kind of early. His parents had him kind of late, and that's how you get the generational gap there.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does your cousin feel about like your involvement in the hobby with all this crazy stuff that you do? Like from you not really knowing anything about trains to being one of the forerunners in the industry in terms of content creation. How does he feel about like your YouTube presence and all the manufacturers you've gotten to deal with and all that?
Well, we have a fun time with it. It's a little bit of a rivalry. I think when I passed his collection amount, it's like, yeah, more trains than you do now, funny stuff like that. But he's been probably my number one cheerleader. He's very supportive. I'll call him if I'm having problems with a manufacturer or too many, naysayers on YouTube. He's really my number one vent source. I put a lot on his shoulders, both from work and in trains, because he understands the dynamics of, I can't believe they announced another SD70 AC or, whatever. I
Yeah.
can't tell that to any other family member or my wife. They don't know what an SD78 is, So, and then work for a long time, the military, you can't complain down to the military unless you want your job in jeopardy and you want your leadership credibility shot.
Right.
So my subordinate, I was at the top of my career field. So almost everybody was down. So I would call and be like, this idiot got arrested, or this moron had the nerve to accuse me of this, or whatever was going on at the time. Military wise, he was a very
Mhm.
good vent too. So he's probably my best friend, to be honest, and also huge influence in YouTube. And he's been nothing but happy. We joke around about whose collection's bigger and stuff like that, but he's been nothing but supportive and happy. And I try to give him a free train every once in a while. I'll just
Mhm.
a lot of times I'll buy stuff to review it or get it or whatever the case is, and I just this is not my era, or this is up his era. Sometimes I'll buy stuff for him, uh,
Mhm.
you know, just to show, hey man, I think I call it my uh, royalties or something. I was like, I give him whatever is up his alley that he's been really looking at. So
Man, dude,
thank you for getting me involved and getting me to where I am.
I need a cousin like you, man. That's wild.
Hey,
um.
I'm giving him brass stuff. He should
Oh,
be
good lord.
happy.
So were you an only child growing up?
Well, interesting story. So a little more overshare than you need, but to explain the situation, my mom died when I was 11 months old.
Mm.
She was literally writing out my birthday invitations for my 1 year birthday. She had a toxic dose of her medication for shingles. Uh,
Mm.
Talked to a couple different medical experts. One theory is she forgot how much she was taking, didn't keep track of her intervals. Another theory is it sat in her stomach and didn't all for some reason metabolized at once. But it ended up being a lethal dose. She passed away. So no other siblings with that. Um, with my mother, stepmother, I do have half siblings with. So I've got a half brother and I have 3 half sisters.
Oh, okay. Nice. I see. So that's interesting. And like that's just so you know, from my perspective, it's not too much information. I appreciate that you feel comfortable telling me that.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting. So, and guys, for those of you watching, that's kind of the point of this podcast today. I want to get to know James inside and outside of the hobby. So we're gonna kind of weave through topics related to your channel and then also your personal life and all that. And like I said,
Yeah.
whatever you're cool with answering, just let me know. But
Everything's on the table, man. I told you.
for sure. So I want to go back to your channel for a minute. So okay, you started in 2009. Cousin got you into it. You made your first layout. You did your first review because nobody else was doing it on YouTube. And actually, crazy thing, I almost didn't believe you because I know you always say you were the first one to do it. I'm like, I'm gonna double check real quick. So your first review, I checked. It was June 20th of 2009, right?
Yeah.
I thought Eric Siegel might have had you beat because he was the only other person I could remember back in those days I was doing reviews.
Yeah.
Eric Siegel's first review was October 9th. So
Yeah.
you had beat him by like 4 months. I was like, my God, okay, this is. But what I want to ask you is like, so when did you, how do I say this? When did you decide like, okay, I'm going to like keep doing like the review thing? Like, how did you make a decision to like just continue doing the YouTube reviews and growing that aspect of your channel?
Well, first important thing I forgot to mention during that visit where my cousin came over, we went and saw 844, which is
Mm-hmm.
my wife's fault because she got word from somebody in her workplace. So it's not 100%. They won't share blame. So it's either that going to see 844 that really bit, or just my cousin coming over there and building the layout that really bit. But 844 was the first thing I really intensely wanted to model, so I think that had a pretty good influence on it. And in terms of continuing with the reviews, initially it was just nobody's doing this. I need to put this out here to help everybody. So I just kept cranking it away, and right away people thought I was getting free stuff right away. And I was like, guys, I mean, the first $40,000 worth of stuff wasn't free at all. So I remember I got like a huge kick out of, I think it was Overland Hobbies at the time. They're like, we'll give you another 5% or something. I'm like, whoa.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's wild. So, okay. So this is one thing that I've been curious about as well. When did you notice that your channel was like starting to become, how do I say this? For lack of a better term, I guess viral. Like when did you notice that like there was a shift? Like it wasn't just a YouTube channel anymore. Like, okay, this is kind of like a thing. Like I'm the HO review guy on YouTube.
Well, I've never taken it too seriously because there's just so much more to my life.
Mhm.
That I love trains, don't get me wrong, but in
Right.
terms of success, I attribute that to other aspects of my life. The
Mhm.
first time it kind of grabbed me by the collar and got my attention was my Operation Lifesaver video. I was still in Northern California, so it couldn't have been any later than 2000, late 2010. The hobby shop guys at, oh man, Western Depot in Yuba City, California, were like, "Hey, man, I saw that video, or it's just a parody video."
Mhm.
It wasn't even intended to be a parody video. That video was supposed to help because a kid was getting very discouraged that nobody would do an Operation Lifesaver video for
Mm.
his. He had a contest. He was like an 8 or 9 year old kid. So I went ahead and did one very quickly with like just being very jokingly, and that thing caught off, just took
Mhm.
off, and I think it was at a couple 100,000 views in 2010. And it's like, holy smokes, and they had to tell me that it was really taking off. I don't hover over statistics. If
Mhm.
somebody reminds me of a milestone, I'll probably put it on Facebook like, hey, this is my whatever subscriber. But as we were talking off camera, I couldn't even remember how many subscribers we were at or views. Um, so that was the first bump. And then the second bump was when I did my layout in Nebraska, 2011. It was how to build a layout from start to finish. Again, nobody
Mhm.
on YouTube, tons of people with way more experience than me, but nobody was taking the time to do it. So
Mhm.
I struggled through that video, and I wouldn't even take my own advice for a lot of that stuff now. Uh, but I was showing people like, hey, even this dummy here can make this work to where trains are running and not derailing like crazy. And that series got like a couple million views at first or something.
Mhm.
So that was where it really took off. And then I don't even remember which video hit a million first. I think it was the Operation Lifesaver. And then there was a like just a run by video that hit a million views and stuff like that. And a lot of times my fan base will kind of tell me like, hey man, you just hit a million views with this, or I'm talking once or twice a year, I'll go in there and look at what's going on
Yeah.
with statistics.
So let me ask you this then. What is your favorite kind of video to make on your channel? Because you don't just do the train reviews. There's other types of videos, and I'll get to that in a moment, but there's other types of videos that you've done on your channel as well. What's been your favorite, the most enjoyable for you to create on your channel?
Well, reviews sometimes, if you do too many of them, it really feels like work, and somebody's
Mhm.
like, somebody doesn't have much pity on that. They're like, "Oh, you play with train, you consider that work," but it gets tedious. So I think my favorite is the build series, or just running trains. I've
Mhm.
got a couple, maybe 2 or 3 videos on running trains, and it's usually when my cousins come to visit me, uh, and he's helping me put on all these unit trains and pulling off the unit trains and putting on passenger cars.
Mhm.
We're just going nuts, like running trains, and we're exhausted at the end of it. But I mean, one video had like 500 different freight cars in it, So,
Mhm. That's neat, man. I
mhm.
think I think that's really cool how you and your cousin can bond like that over model road. I have a cousin I'm really close with. Her name's Janelle. We're 20 days apart. We grew up together,
Mhm.
and she she it's funny because we're like in a way because we've been around each other for so long, we're like twins. But one of the things that she'll always tell me, she's like, you don't get mad over anything as much as you do as when one of your trains doesn't work. Like even when we were kids, like you just used to get mad. But like it's always good to just have like a cousin to kind of bounce your hobby off of. Like even though she's not into trains, like I'll tell her about stuff like, oh, I just bought this brass engine and man, I'm gonna put sound in it. And she called me the other day. It took me like 2 or 3 weeks to figure out like what was wrong with his engine. Like, why isn't the decoder working? I fried a decoder before I could even truly get the damn thing running. But she called me. I'm like, Janelle, I got it to work. It took me 2 days. I was been up till midnight the last 2 days. And I got it to work. And she's like, wow, you're really passionate about this right now. I'm like, of course I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
But I think that's like family. And I want to get to the family aspect of the hobby and other things later. But I want to share something. I want to share one of my favorite videos that you did on your channel. It's a real quick one. Interestingly enough, some of my favorite content that you've done is not the train reviews. It's the little comedy sketches that you do. And there's one in particular yesterday. I hadn't seen it in years, but I ran across it again. I'm like, you know what? This is hilarious. I just wanted to play it real quick. Let me pull this up on stream.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too, is the April Fool's videos.
Yeah, those are there's another one I want to ask you about too. Hold on. Share screen. Let me go over here. Let me do this. Okay. This one, dude, like oh my God. Hang on. Hold on. Hang on a second. I think I messed it up. Share. Did I share audio? Share screen. Share screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. Bam. All right. Next time I'll be more prepared. All right. This one was great.
Right. James Wright, YouTube News, reporting live at the scene of a horrific accident in which a train and a tractor have collided and a young boy's life hangs in the balance. Our sources tell us that this young boy was just trying to go to the club to see his girlfriend LaQuisha after feeding some cows, and he didn't look both ways, listen, and therefore his life hangs in the balance. Now, an railroad campaign called Operation Lifesaver tells you to look, listen, and therefore you might live. And apparently this young boy did not take that advice. Damages are estimated in the millions of dollars, but our sources tell us that HO scale is 1/87th of that. So we are guessing in the thousands of dollars. We have live footage here for you to take a look of an aerial view of the damage so you can see exactly what has happened. The train engine is laying on its side, and several pieces of rolling stock are also devastated. The tractor is in bad condition, and like I said, the young man's life hangs in a balance. From what I understand, he's been put in the hospital down the road at HO Scale Hospital. We tried to get live views of him and his parents to see how he's doing, but the figures are entirely too small. Back to you, Barbara, in the studio. James Wright, YouTube News.
I love that. That's one of my all-time favorite James Wright videos. Like that was so I gotta ask you this. Who was filming that?
My wife, yeah. She unless my cousin was visiting, my camera person was always my wife, and she was so happy when I finally got a tripod and like a remote control.
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing these videos. But that was actually a follow-up to the viral Operation Lifesaver video. And I had fun with it. You can definitely see where the hairline and the waistline has changed a little bit. Always have fun with those type of videos.
That's like that. His LaQuisha.
Yeah. When I video too, I thought it was kind of funny. There's like a rural farmer, dating a girl named LaQuisha, and you had to meet her at the club.
I love the part where you're like, it's 187 scale, so it's only in the thousands of dollars. That was great, man. Here's the thing, and this is why I really enjoy your content, is that you're very down to earth. Like the humility that you have just resonates from you. Just even when talking to you on and off camera, like it's like I don't feel nervous. There are a lot of other YouTubers that I've met or talked to in the past that have large followings, and it's it's easy to let ego creep in, but with you, you're just an average, everyday, down to earth guy, and I know that. I know you know that. I know you know that. I know that you know that, but. It's just I appreciate that's like the humility you have, and it shows in your content like that. Just videos like that are great. Those are my personal favorites.
The thing about humility, real quick, and I'm saying this to other YouTubers that don't have it, is you are a model train YouTuber. You
Right.
can't even go to a class reunion and use that as a bragging point. But some of these guys, I don't, like you said, ego creeps in. It's not, even if I was a celebrity for some reason, like an actual, no kidding, Hollywood celebrity, when I could, I would stop and talk to people and do live streams and probably pepper in even like very, very, everyday people live streams, not just talk to other celebrities and stuff. It's just kind of my personality. But some people, all they need is a little money or a little fame just to push them over the edge to be jerks, and that's just not me.
Right.
Yep.
I wanna ask you this too. So your wife is the one that shot that video. How was your wife reacting when you started taking on this new hobby? How did she, like, what did she think of you getting into trains and start buying all these trains and bringing them into the house and all that? How was that?
Well, consider I remember I do all the finances in the house, so I felt guilty at first because there's a lot of money going out the door. I mean, we drove nice cars and stuff, but I mean, when model trains are exceeding the value of cars in some cases, it's not for somebody that's not used to that. A lot of modelers will have a house value worth of trains in their stash or collection, but when you're brand new and you're not used to that, we had conversations about, is this too much? And she always was very, very cool about it. She's like, you've never financially let us down in the past. So I trust what you're doing and all that stuff. And she never gave me a hard time. She did kind of I think one time I did an inventory or something. I'm like, holy crap, I've got blah, blah, blah on trains. And she's like, never say how much you have. I was like, okay, I won't say it.
So we're gonna loop back to the relationship aspect of the hobby, marriage, all that. There's other questions I want to ask you about that, and I think that that's a valuable conversation to have because there are horror stories about people that that have been in this hobby and it's caused issues with their marriage. But we'll loop back to that later. There's another video I wanna ask you about that you did that I've been really curious about for a long time. Let me pull this one up on the screen now too. Hold on. Get this advertisement out the way. Let's see. Share. Yeah, don't show these tips again. Share screen, share audio. This one is definitely top 5 best James Wright video of all time.
Well, hey guys, I always get asked, how do I get all my trains for reviews and for my personal collection? And today, with a little bit of travel in this briefcase, I'm going to answer that question.
So I'm gonna say this before the video starts. For anybody who has never seen this video, like the amount of effort that was put into this, like, I've always been curious as to how in the actual hell did this man do this video?
Well, no need to be in here anymore. Let's get on the road.
Because it starts off so, like, somewhat casual, right? He's like, oh, he's getting in his car, briefcase, whatever. Okay. Puts his briefcase down.
Let me just make sure it's there one more time.
Flex, okay. Large stacks of cash. Wait, airport, wait, what? What's happening? Let me just say, this man had to prop his tripod up in the on the driveway, back the car out, and drive down this shit. Like this is great. I'm sorry, this is just great. I love this video. James, how? Where this right here? How in the did you actually get on a jet to do this video?
I have to explain from the get-go, from the start. You never get a short answer out of me.
It's all good.
First of all, the idea came along years prior to that, and I decided to. And this is the first time I'm telling the real story because I got all of the questions about this early on, like right when it began. So what happened was the cash is actually movie money. I did not have, nor would I ever have, that much cash. in a briefcase. I actually had to write a check for almost that much cash today for the house, earnest money,
Wow.
and I would never ever transport that in a briefcase. So that's that part. The car is mine. The jet is some Air Force connections.
Mhm.
Basically, being able to take a private jet ride, from one location to another for a very nominal fee, and then just some footage of that. It wasn't actually that New York trip. I wasn't going to New York from that footage or anything. But yeah, that was a trip that was from before. So.
That's insane. So okay, so you didn't have a big wad of cash and a private jet just to buy trains. Then is what I'm
No,
hearing.
no.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because it was regardless. That's a really crazy flex.
Yeah.
Like just pulling up to the airport and the camera.
Well, if you look at the date on the video, it is April Fool's, and
Yeah,
most of the points of my April Fool's video is the original spirit of April Fool's, which is to actually make people think X, Y, or Z.
yeah, yeah.
One of my great military April Fool's jokes was taking a gallon jug of water and hiding it in a bathroom right outside of a conference room, and then leaving the door propped and saying, "Excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom," and then slowly pouring a gallon of water as people thought I was peeing. So, yeah, I've always loved April Fools. Unfortunately, this year with all the craziness of the house purchasing and stuff, I'm going to have to sit it out. But I
Right.
love coming up with a good April Fool's idea, and I have one that's in the bank. I just need to find a good, basically, way to put it together. So.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think, where do I want to go from here? Because I've got 18 trillion questions, but it's like where to transition to next. So let's talk about the house. Let's talk about home ownership, buying a home. Because as someone who's young and understands the value of owning property, right? How
Mhm.
old were you when you purchased your first home? Let me ask you that question first.
Oh, let's see, 27, I think it was. It's probably around the time I started my
Mhm.
YouTube channel, because not only did I purchase property to live in, but I also started investing, using it as an investment with renters and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, my first large home purchase was um, California. This one going on is probably my second largest home purchase, but it's one of the probably top three ways of accumulating wealth. But you have to time it out right.
Mhm.
I got to California. I was renting a house that was worth, I can't remember. It was, let's just not even say that because I don't want people to think I'm bragging, but it was
Right.
worth X amount of dollars. And the guy said, if it goes just a little bit higher, we've got to kick you out. And I was paying through my nose for rent. I pay right now what I'm renting this house for, what I paid in California way back in 2007.
Wow.
So I was paying out my nose for rent. They said if it goes a little higher, we're going to have to kick you out because we want to sell. Well, right then the market crashed, and
Mm.
that house lost 70% of its value. Now, if I would have bought during that time, I
Mhm.
would have been up a creek. Actually, the military had a kind of a get out of jail free card, but I would have pretty
Mhm.
much been under a lot of stress at a minimum. So once the crash happened, then I started investing in real estate in 2010 ish,
Mhm.
and you know, just going through. I followed Dave Ramsey financially, so I was trying to use that advice. Um,
Mhm.
and then when I retired, I cashed out of a lot of that because I wanted as much cash on hand. When you
Mhm.
when you retire from the military, you're essentially giving up a six-figure job. You don't have any idea what you're going to get paid because the pension varies from very low to really high depending on all these different factors. You don't know when the paycheck's going to start. You don't know if you should find a job, if you're going to find a job. I threw in moving to a whole different state on top of all that. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So I cashed out of real estate. Still towards the top, but I think it's still going because
Yeah.
houses we looked at have gained think my house that I last sold has gained, what did it say, $34,000 in value. I looked up the other day, and I just sold the last one in May or June of 2020. So there's more money to be made there, but it's just too much stress, and I'd rather have the cash on hand.
So you basically set yourself up outside of your job. You set yourself up with multiple income streams that were basically giving you passive residual.
It's kind of passive residual, and also just diversification. Try to be as economically bulletproof as possible. My day job is in the healthcare industry. I'm a director level in the healthcare industry, so one of the probably most needed fields that will probably stay during an economic crisis. A little bit of YouTube ad revenue that I really don't add in or budget.
Right.
My pension is broken into two parts. There's a VA portion, and then there's the military portion, and then rental income still. So right now I'm paying somebody else's mortgage renting this place, but it was needed to find the right home. So that's just kind of the diversification I have. Obviously, savings, stocks and bonds. Dave Ramsey's philosophy is you start off, you pay off all your debts, or you save $1,000 first, then you pay off all your debts, then you save 3 to 6 months of your
the baby steps. Yeah.
And so you just go along that process and follow that, and that's what I did from pretty young, probably again around the time I was investing and stuff, or purchasing real estate.
Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit here. So how old were you when you got into the military?
I entered the military at 17 years old. So
holy crap.
And that was only by like a day or two, but I like saying it because I retired from the military at 37 because of the the day, but also the fact that they let you save up all your vacation time. They really don't care what you're doing for the last month or two before that. I was done in February, and I didn't stop getting paid until August. So
that's so wow. Okay, so from basically 17 to 37, you're in the military. Yep. What age did you get married?
21. So I've been married really technically 20. We had a Justice of the Peace wedding in Texas, but then Texas, because I wasn't a resident anymore, they had all these rules or something that wasn't even possible or something to get a Justice of the Peace. Or no, Texas is where we could get a marriage certificate. We couldn't get one in Indiana where our wedding was, because neither one of us were Indiana residents at the time. So we got a Justice of the Peace in August of 2003, and then we got our actual ceremony in January 10th of 2004. So we're going on 17 years.
Nice, man. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. My grandfather was an Air Force man, so I appreciate your service. And also congratulations on having a marriage that's lasting and doing well. I want to get more into that aspect of things too, because I think that choosing well is a huge part of even this hobby, and I don't think people understand the importance of that. But okay, so you went into the Air Force, or was it the Air Force or
Air Force? Yeah.
So you got into the Air Force at 17, going into 18, and so how your rank? So you ranked up as the years progressed. How long did it take you to basically level up throughout the military?
So when I joined the military, my philosophy was 4 or 20 years. And to make rank, basically the top of the supervisory ranks as fast as possible, without going into the political ranks, we're just a couple above that. So there's basically, so I hit my goal. I hit 4 years, did not have finances where I wanted them. They're pretty good for a 21-year-old, but not where I wanted them. Didn't have education completely done where I wanted it. So I decided, well, we're going past 4, which means we're going to 20. So at year 11, which is slow for the most branches, but really fast for the Air Force, I made that E7 rank that was basically the supervisory rank without going to the two above that. And then I had the option time and time again for those two ranks above that. And I was just like, I don't want it. It's too much moving, too much politics. You know, you stop kind of working for people and you start working for, you know, the people above you. And it's like, it's almost gross what some of these people do to get promoted. And they kind of don't take care of people anymore. They take care of themselves. So, yep. So I sat there for 9 years at that rank because I refused to go any higher. Would kind of play games with the promotion system to keep out of the serious running. I dipped my toe in the water one time and came really close. If I would have probably answered a few questions on one of the two tests a little differently, I would have played with fire and got burnt, essentially.
Yeah.
But I once I saw that, I was like, holy crap, nope, stay away. So
yeah.
Yep.
Wow. That's wild, man. So let me ask you this question. I want to get into the family aspect of your channel, your life. So you said you got married at 21. Let me ask you this. When and how did you meet your wife?
So in Abilene, Texas, she worked and was a student at a university called Abilene Christian. They actually they just missed the Sweet 16 tournament this year by one game. But Abilene Christian University, pretty major college, private college, but they have a food court and this little jazz club where people talk and spoken word and do their little things. And it was just like a hangout spot. And her friend had introduced us, and I met her there. And the first thing she asked, I was mature beyond my years. Then I regressed a little bit later, but I could not stand the immaturity level I was dealing with as a 20-year-old dating, or I'm sorry, an 18-year-old dating 18-year-olds.
I feel that.
She's like 6 months older than me, so it's. But the first thing she asked me to do was go to a rave, and I'm like, what? Oh no. Military, drugs, nope. So I find out she had been pressured into wanting to go to one, and I was about to break it off right then. I'm like, here we go with another immature person. But she ended up being really mature, really wise beyond her years. She was pre-med at the time. The intention was for her to be a doctor. I run that by marrying her because every state we moved to, the requirements were changing. So she ended up being an analytical chemist. And even that was a tough road to begin with because Florida was the first state we moved to married, and all the retired people were basically doing the jobs for cheap, and it was hard to find work.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Explain the importance, even behind your work, your YouTube channel, explain the importance of having a good woman that has values aligned with you. Explain the importance of that when doing anything, just in life in general.
I can tell you firsthand. I have seen it both ways, man. My father, the stepmother that he ended up marrying after my mother passed away years later, it is crucial that you think beyond appearances, emotional feelings, just, sexual impulses, don't want to make this X-rated, but
it is my channel. You're good.
you have to think beyond that because it can make or break finances, happiness. I mean, my first boss would stay at work after hours to avoid his family life, and then want everybody else to kind of be there too. And I said, that's not going to be me. I need a type B. I'm type A. I need a type B spouse that will be type A when needed, but will also, take everything, have, low blood pressure, take everything with a grain of salt. I cannot deal with, drama. I had friends that they would stop for gas on the way home, and the girlfriends or wives would be like, "Where were you at? Were you cheating on me?"
Yep.
Pumping gas for 4 minutes. Yeah. So I couldn't deal with that. So that's important. Financial responsibility is important. You cannot have a spender and a spender unless you have a huge amount of income there. You have to have at least one saver. Believe it or not, she's more of a saver than I am, even though I handle the finances. But I mean, she grew up dirt poor. She's in a private university when I meet her. She's paying for her college, insane tuition for a private university. She's paying it off while she's doing it. She ended up taking like 1/6 of the total bill as debt, and we had that gone in the first year we were in Florida because she was working her butt off the whole time. So, I can't say enough about how crucial it is. And the reason I compare it to my father and who he married is she has financially ruined him. I mean, she, just time and time again, financially ruined him by leaving, coming back, spending, it's just, and, he does a fair amount of spending himself, but it's just, he never could get ahead because he didn't have that other person to be like, to even check his spending. Cause I need my spending checked sometimes. Even though my wife pretty much refuses to do it, but she will. When I bought that BMW convertible from that April 1st video, that thing was the most expensive thing. I had houses that were less expensive than than that car.
Wow.
And she was like, okay, like about to put her foot down, just kind of raised the eyebrow a bit, but she didn't think I was actually going to do it because she knew me pretty well. But I forced myself to do it because I was going through some drama at the time in the military. I was working for somebody I really couldn't stand. I had 2 or 3 subordinates constantly trying to undermine me, and it was my escape was to go on convertible drives versus drinking or smoking or any of the things you can get into that are not productive. So she was really surprised when I came home with that thing, and she's like, "Wow, you really did it. You spent a stupid amount of money." I'm like, "Yeah." Because again, Dave Ramsey says you can't spend, if you buy a car, half of your income for the year in value, and it has to be cash. So she's like, "You just spent that much money," and I kind of wish I had some of that back for the house that we're going into, but I think it was better than some of the roads that could have taken me down. So anyway, all of that super important, and and trusting and all that stuff. You need all of that. I could go on for that about 2 hours, but the biggest thing is, if you haven't seen it, this may sound mildly sexist, but I really do believe that you have to kind of make it a long-term job interview. You can't rush into things. You can't say, "Oh, she's a 10, let that be my guiding light." It cannot be that.
Right. I listen to you and I see certain parallels. My grandfather was very, very influential in how I perceive relationships, how I go about relationships. Me personally, my mom, she came when she found out that she was going to have me. She came back home to be with my grandparents because she wanted me to see the importance of what a real relationship was like. So I saw the way my grandfather treated my grandmother. I understood the importance of having somebody that could really work with. The thing that he always stressed to me was this. He's like, "Look, there was a point when I realized that I had to personally do some changing. Like in order for things to work out between me and your grandmother, I had to do some changing because there was a lot of things that he would tell me that he was into, he shouldn't have been into, and he had to transform. And there were things about her that he couldn't understand or he couldn't get a grip on, but he knew he couldn't change her. He said, I have to do the changing for the both of us." But another thing he always told me was that one of the greatest things about your grandmother is that she always followed me. She always, I'd always come to her and ask her, it's like, "Hey, what do you feel about this?" She's like, "It's fine. Just go ahead and do it." But she, no matter what it was, what direction you wanted to go, she'd always follow him. And they worked together, up until the day he died, and it was amazing to see somebody that just, they had, you could tell the love was there. Right. And I think that and I know that this is really supposed to be a train podcast, but this is related in the sense that, guys, like, you can't, like, trains are great and all that. Having money is great and all that. You know, having a nice house to put your trains in is great and all that, but none of that matters. You can't enjoy any of that stuff if you don't have a great spouse that's
Right.
gonna back you up.
And you
You
need the perspective to realize that you can wake up tomorrow not here, and that none of it does matter. With
Mm-hmm.
with the financial stuff, and even the April Fool's video, the only part of me it really triggers to even put that stuff online, or anytime you probably see on Facebook where I'll put something and people say it's bragging, is to get under the skin of the people that aren't happy for people. Like a lot of that I do just to mess with people that
Mm-hmm.
aren't happy for you and want you to fall on your face the next step. And it's kind of a defiance to those people and kind of a troll.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about your grandparents. My grandparents, same thing to an extent. A lot with finances. My grandfather was huge into where I am today financially as
Mm-hmm.
well. So
Let's go back to your channel for a moment and talk a little bit about controversy and kind of how you handle that. So let me ask you this first. What are some of the biggest critiques that you hear about your channel being a content creator?
number one is he gets everything for free. And then probably the second and third would be, I need to be more lively. That's just not my personality. Luckily I chose a model train forum channel, because I probably wouldn't have survived in a lot of the channels. But this is kind of my personality. It's very low blood pressure. I get angry, and I get angry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm enjoying my hobby, it's like I'm on a beach, and that's why people are getting the calm, relaxed demeanor, sometimes Ben Steinish, monotone demeanor they're getting from me, is because I am relaxed. This is my escape. Even talking to you right now falls under that category of, no offense, I didn't mean that, because I appreciate being here, but I wrap everything that's trains into my escape. So
Right.
very much, very relaxed, even doing the reviews. And sometimes I just get so into the review that I start going Ben Stein and monotone. In terms of the free stuff, like I said, from the beginning, when I was forking out 40 grand or more on every bit of everything I did for the first several years was bought at the same rate, maybe a few percentage points. More, so.
Let me add to that real quick. Let me throw something in here. The criticism of, oh, he gets stuff for free. Even look, and I don't, it's none of my business. I don't need to ask what percentage. It's not my, I don't need to know personally what percentage of stuff you get for free. It doesn't matter. The content, regardless of if it's free or paid for, the content that you provide is fantastic. But I think people need to start asking themselves, well, why shouldn't he get some stuff for free? Look at what he's done for the hobby. You go ahead.
When you look at all the different content creators on YouTube, most of them are getting stuff for free. I think where I get annoyed is the percentage of what's free. One example is the Scale Trains Tier 4 Gevos. People saw 20 or 21 Gevos lined up in that video when they put out their Tier 4s. I'm pretty sure it was a Tier 4. What they don't know is that Scale Trains sent all those to me in a box for free. 21 sound locomotives. There's a catch to the end of this, so don't get too surprised. I unboxed every single one of those, did the opening shot, ran several of those, boxed them back up, and sent them back to Scale Trains. So that was an example of, now what do you see on camera? Oh, 21 locomotives. There's no way a military guy that young could afford 21 locomotives. No idea about the rental history, no idea about the income revenues or streams. But they're just making these judgments, these rash judgments. I see 21 locomotives, must be free. Guy is broke or whatever, So when you're sitting there doing a review where you had to spend all day unboxing locomotives, testing them, your chances of getting a good review are slim. So I think I'm more fair than ever in those situations.
Mhm.
Where there are free locomotives, which again is a very, I couldn't tell you a percentage. I really couldn't. I have no idea. We could go video by video and it could be like that. And eventually we'll get back to a point to where I don't remember, but
Right.
majority, and what I told you before we went on too is that I make sure that anything I get for free, that amount's put out in giveaways or spent on going to train shows to cover them. It's forked back out to keep me honest.
Right.
I have cut manufacturers off, even recently, for pushing the limit. They want to continue working with me, but it's like, hey, we want this link in the description. We want to coordinate anything that's broken, this, and this. And I'm like, nope. So I think what annoys me is some of the same critiques from people saying you get free stuff are the ones that really want stuff for free. One of them in particular that I will not name, I found out was flat out blackmailing manufacturers. He would go to the show, ask for the item, and then when they didn't provide him the item, he went and bought the item and crapped all over it. And if he went to a hobby shop and asked for an item, they would say no. He would go and get the item from the hobby shop and do a 2-for-1 where he crapped on the manufacturer's item from the hobby shop, both of them telling him no or not, bowing to his supposed greatness. So
there's a dark there's the dark underlying seedy greediness of the model railroad hobby. I guess that's wild.
Yeah, and I know manufacturers. I'm good friends with most of them, and I'll be honest with you there. But I mean, I get some people calling me. I can't believe he did that. I've gotten in arguments at train shows on the floor about a review I've done with people that are at the very tippity top of this hobby. Big names that anybody would know because their name might be on the box or part of the box. So everybody's critics, but I think I handled it, and I'm not a person that pats myself on the back much, but I think I handled it better than most. Because even in the last couple of months with a company that I've stopped doing product reviews with, and still doing the products to where people can't tell. It's just I'm flat out 100% buy them regular MSRP, or I'm not MSRP, regular discount pricing. I've seen where I know they've got sponsorships or arrangements and people are lying, like saying, oh, I bought this because I liked it. No, you got it for free. You will never hear me say I bought this because I liked it unless I bought it because I liked it.
Right.
I'll be vague, what was it? It was something I reviewed just a couple months ago, that the Bachmann ACS 64s. One of them was bought, one of them was provided. So I'm not going to go into, hey guys, I bought one of these, the other one's provided on pages, and and I'm not doing that with every video.
But here's my thing. It's like, whether it's free or bought, how does that change the content that you make? It has no bearing on the actual content.
They take me not being a rivet counter and dissecting every millimeter of that locomotive as I'm bought out. And what they don't understand is I'm in my bubble. I'm happy. I will be way more angry with a lot of other things in life, but trains is not one of them. It wasn't that way when I got them, when I bought them at regular prices. It wasn't. I've had to buy stuff MSRP because it's been sold out so quick and I missed the boat. I wasn't paying attention to the hobby. Recently, I paid MSRP for something. I'm looking around. I can't remember what it was. But the fact is, regardless of that situation, I'm in my happy bubble. I'm not going to spend hours comparing it to prototype photos and say that this antenna is about 1/10 of a millimeter more aft than it should be. That's not me. And if they want that, they can maybe go find it on YouTube. I just don't know where.
I think people just kind of they forget that, like, you're also a modeler that just loves and enjoys the hobby just like everybody else does. I've even had people criticize me for, like, this isn't an actual review because you're focusing on the sound more than you did anything else. It's like, no. I have a niche. Like, there's certain things that I enjoy about the model that I want to review. And if you want to go have somebody compare prototypes and explain what every single pipe detail, the name of every pipe and everything, look, go to somebody else's channel for that. That's not what we do here.
Well, most of the time it's jealousy, I've noticed, because like I said, the hobby does have a good hum to the rumor mill. And a lot of times, and if a manufacturer tells me something, I'm probably going to take it at their word in terms of like somebody trying to extort them for a product or whatever. But a lot of the folks that are really up my rear end, people trying to duplicate everything or, try to remake the formula, are out for the ad revenue or the sponsorships. And it didn't exist when I started.
Right.
YouTube ads, they might have existed in 2009. I know they had a stupid high ceiling. So I never started this for financial gain. I think it's wrong, at least to sit there and make all that noise, but be really trying to do it for financial gain. And it's kind of comical is I'm waiting for everything to level off where people, I think eventually in YouTube, everybody's going to kind of level off. I mean, it's like a race from where you started, but eventually you get towards the top of how many people are on YouTube, and I'll slow down and these other guys will catch up, and then they reach my little mountain peak that they think is a mountain peak. And they're like, oh man, I'm only making like $300 a month in ad revenue, or $200 a month in ad revenue. I thought, so it's kind of comical because I'm waiting for it. Like,
right.
And some of them are really passionate. Like I know one guy recently got a sponsorship deal, and he's just like over the moon. And that's good to have that newness on there. But once that mountain peak ain't as great as you think it is, and maybe a couple $100 a month is a big deal to a lot of people, but you can't rely on it because it's so erratic. So what is it doing? I mean, it might buy you a locomotive a month, but it's still, to them, it's like the end of the world. To me, that was like 2011 or something. I'm just kind of over it. It doesn't have that new scent to it anymore for me.
Right. So. You touched on something that I think is interesting. And that's the idea of jealousy in this hobby, because it is real. I remember, and I don't think I've ever told this story on my channel before, but when I was at the train club when I was younger, I started my channel when I was 14, and you were one of the inspirations for me starting my channel, so I always gotta give you credit for that. But I kind of copied your review style for a while.
Well, I don't mind that. I just don't do that and then be angry and then basically try to be doing the same thing or to get the finances out of it.
Right.
And don't criticize me when you're really doing the same thing, or trying to do the same thing. So
exactly. But when I started my channel, I didn't have. If people can go back to the very beginning, I had like 2 engines maybe with DCC, and I didn't even run them at the time. I was on the floor DC power pack just running my trains. I eventually became a member of a model railroad club, and as a result of being part of a club, you start acquiring things, you start learning things, and my collection started growing. What ended up happening was when I was about 18, my mother and I, we had a business we were running, and we were making a fair amount of money, and I started buying up a lot of models, and I had club members coming up to me in my face like, how in the hell are you able to afford all this stuff? Are you selling drugs?
No.
This is like, okay, man. Like and then I played into. I'm like, listen. Like I remember one club member was like, look, Bill, this is how it works. I got a bag of cocaine in the back of my car, and I push it, and that's how I'm able to afford all my. And I would tell club members, I'm like, well, you must be in order to afford all that. It's like, look, and this is what I always try to tell people, is that God's just blessed me, throughout my life and given me the opportunity to be able to have certain things, be able to purchase certain things. But I do notice that like jealousy is real when it comes to this hobby. Like if you do something a certain way, someone just really just absolutely can hate you for it out of nowhere. And look, I'm not one to shy away from like constructive criticism. Like I find it funny because one of the things I used to hear people say about you is that, oh, you're not critical enough of the manufacturers in your videos, and I've been told that I'm too critical of manufacturers, right? I think that there's a balance. I think that people don't really, how do I say this? People don't really understand what true constructive criticism is. It's one thing to critique something like, hey, I like this and I don't like this, right? But to go to somebody and say, oh, how dare you get a train for free? Who do you think you are? Or you must have got that for free, or you must be selling drugs. That's not constructive criticism. That's just being a jerk.
Oh man, I've had it all. I've had people tell me, I had a hobby store guy tell me, you need to be saving for your kids' college. Well, that's already done, man. Or and then they'll switch it on you, and then you're bragging because they'll sit there and go, oh, you need to do this. I've done that. You need to do this. I've done that. You need to do this. I've done that. Well, you need to do this for a house. I've done that. And I get a break, for being a veteran or blah blah blah. Well, you shouldn't just use that, blah, blah, blah. I'm not. I'm actually doing a regular conventional percentage, but using that type of, all these different things. And then as you start counter checking, it's like now you're bragging, and it's just it's like rock hard place.
They start backpedaling when you start defending yourself. Like, no, that's not that's not how this works. This is how it works.
Right. And so I don't really. I started with a very thin skin. I actually called somebody and chewed them out with a comment using my connections. I had their phone number, their cell phone number in a matter of minutes. When I first started, I chewed them out, and I slowly, we're talking last year or two, I've really kind of started to develop a thick skin. I'll still argue online. On my Facebook page primarily, I will sometimes just drop things to stir the pot. Because sometimes I think people that can't realize how to be happy for you, I'm going to have fun with them and trigger them a little more, But, there's been a mix. I've heard everything, I'm not a big race card guy, but, I think one or two times, that was like, I've been flat out told, well, how can you afford that? And sometimes I wonder if that's been in very small situations occasionally. And then just the military thing, in the 90s, the military there's huge news stories everywhere that the military was on welfare. You could qualify for welfare. But what they didn't understand was, and still the politicians pushed for it, they didn't understand that those people that were qualifying for welfare were basically using the system because a huge chunk of your pay doesn't show up as taxable because of the housing and food allowance. And just to give you perspective, it was pushing 50% of my pay in Nebraska. So, people were basically using the system, but the public pressure to the politicians still had them react. And now you have like brand new guys making stupid amounts of money. So the military is well paid now, in my opinion. So just all that not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, and you're having to explain this to people, it does get exhausting, and it does get under your skin. But catch me on a bad day, I'll still kind of have a thin skin, but majority of the time I'm kind of letting it roll off my back now.
Right. Now, James, there is one question that I have been dying to ask you for probably the last 10 years or so that I've been watching your channel. Okay.
Oh boy.
Now, are you ready for this? I'm glad you're sitting down, but I'm very curious about this. Okay.
Yep.
Are you black? Not that it matters, but it's something. I'm to be totally honest with you. It's something that I've been wondering for the longest time, and I just thought,
is this on the Carlton scale of black or just? Well, I'll break down my ancestry real quick for you to the 4 largest components. Okay.
All right.
We'll start on my dad's side. My grandfather was black as night. My grandfather, again, a huge inspiration to me that, you can do whatever you want in life. He joined the Air Force in 1955. He married a white woman in the 50s, early 60s. I don't know the exact date. I think it was 59. Very racially turbulent time in the country. Retired in 1979 at 24 years in service, and then ran a factory where most of the workers were from Kentucky in the 80s. Well, there's still a lot of just kind of deep-rooted rural racism. So he kind of proved to me that you could do whatever you want. So that's the black side of me, 25% there. Grandmother was white. She's actually from France. He met her in France. She
Wow.
is like straight off the boat French.
Wow.
And then and she brought a lot of great recipes and a lot of great heritage with her. On my mother's side, did a little genealogy. We know Italian. My great grandfather was, again, the one that took me out to trains directly from overseas, Italy. And then, and actually, the same part of Italy that Piancos from Train World are from. Their heritage goes back to. And then the other portion we didn't really find out till we had my youngest son, which has a rare genetic condition, we think is German ancestry. So there you have it: German, Italian, black, and French. So you know how the some races will put out their little flag in the window, like the Mexicans will have the Mexican flag, Puerto Rican
Right.
flag, Puerto Rican flag. I got the UN. I got the UN flag in my window off my mirror in my car.
That's awesome. And ultimately, I want to say this too. You're a human being. That's how God created us. We're both human beings. Regardless of the skin pigmentation. Here's the deal, man. Color is not an angle that I've ever really thrown on this channel. It's a topic that I don't really touch on. I talked about it briefly in one video where it was the Broadway Limited F7 review where I talked about my grandfather, how he went into the military the same time as your grandfather did, which is really interesting. I think he was 54 when he went in, but he talked about being on the troop train and how they would put the white sheet over the passenger cars to separate the white and the black troops from each other. When they were in California, there was no sheet, but when they got to Texas, they put that sheet right up because of segregation. Right. But I was never taught to use my race as a crutch. I'd never wanted to make that the theme of my channel. I'm just a young kid who just so happens to be black that likes to do train stuff. But I will say this though, it is cool to when you do see other people that can kind of relate to you culturally in the hobby. When I was growing up, the only black people that I knew that were into trains were me, my grandfather, my uncle, who played in the NFL, and then a gentleman by the name of Tony Lash, who had an amazing scale layout. But other than that, I had no idea that there were any other black folk that were into trains. That was what a lot of family members they would deem as a white man's hobby or whatever. That it's asinine. But I think it is, like I said, I'm glad that you were so you were so open with answering that question. Well,
the other thing I'll say real quick, and it is probably a little bit of a hot topic, is I kind of agree with Morgan Freeman was on a CNN, I think, broadcast one time and said, we're never going to get over this race thing until we see people as people. I don't know if we'll ever reach that because we're wearing what we are a little more than some people would be. I'm kind of racially ambiguous. I can tell you are a black male, right?
Right.
But I agree with the crutch thing because you can't. I'm a fighter to where if I find out that I'm in not rural, I'm in the tip of the South and the border of Tennessee and Georgia. And when I was deciding whether to look for a job or not, I got really bored really fast. So one day I just went blasting out resumes, and I'm like, why am I not getting it back? And some people they're wired to think that race is the first reason, and there's other people that are wired to think everything but that, and there's some people that are wired to think somewhere in between. And I was just like, my first reaction wasn't, I'm not getting callbacks because I'm black. They, after the interviews or whatever, when they kind of realized I might be. But my first reaction was like, oh, well, they don't want me. I don't really care what their reason is. I don't think it's because I'm black, but I don't care because they just lost out. I've had companies telling me, oh, well, the money you're asking, we can have 2 employees for the price of 1. For the money, you're asking, I would expect a PhD level education, just being jerks, So all right, I'll go work for somebody else. And when I did finally get accepted, it was not really that long. It was only like a month, 3 weeks into searching, um, hardcore. And I was more appreciative of the opportunity. I killed it for the company. I was promoted within a few months. I was just promoted back in February. And I got a huge raise, So I was like, well, all those other companies lost out. One company wanted better culture. I could have contributed to that, but they kept kicking the can down the road. And I was like, and sometimes it was my conveyance too, because some of the jobs just were not up my alley. I'm more of a managerial white collar guy, and some of the jobs were like Pepsi, for example, was making a job for me.
Wow.
Right when I accepted this position, to be in charge of like 3 different distribution facilities, but it was a lot of physical, and my back and a lot of parts and pieces from my body are torn up from the military. In the early days, I picked up really heavy stuff, and feel free to go longer, because I know my answers are a lot longer than you're probably anticipating, but
You're good.
But there was probably more opportunity for me than I thought. Even my dad was like, well, we'll see. There's a lot of racism down there, with no actual clue what's going on. So I just use that as fuel, if it even was a thing, to try even harder. So
that's what my grandfather always taught me. My mother always taught me. My grandmother always taught me. We never, we never used race as a crutch. My grandfather said, look, sometimes in life's not fair. Sometimes you are, as a black man, you might have to work harder than the other person, because people are racist, and that's just the reality of the situation. But you don't sit here and mope and cry about it. You work your ass off. And as a result, eventually some will work for you. You might have to work a little bit harder, but some will pop off for you.
And statistically, it's a chance. I mean, is it probably more a chance in a small town in Alabama than like, Seattle or Los Angeles? Yeah, but you'd be surprised, man. Like some places are surprises me. I've been all over the country. I've been to like 47 states, and some places were more surprising than others. So.
Let me ask you this: have you ever had to deal with prejudice in the hobby at all? Has that ever been an aspect of, because of your color, your skin pigmentation, people had a bias about you in the hobby?
No, I mean, there's one guy that contacted me. He's like, "Oh, this one company, I'm pretty sure they're racist." I'm like, "Okay, what's the story?" All it was they didn't know what I was.
Right.
That's everybody's question. I mean, even my boss asked me that a couple weeks. He's like, I couldn't into my job. He's like, yeah, couldn't do it in the interview. I knew I'd get my ass suit off, but I was just curious, and I didn't find that as authentically racist. I think more so, there's a couple people that are jealous, because there's some people in the model train industry that are modelers, and they get annoyed with whatever they think the reality is. I had a train company that I ended up cutting off, asking me what Train World paid me. What does that have to do with anything? Well, how much is Train World paying you, and what, so, and then I did some research, because I do my fair share of like, okay, if you're a problem, and I know a few people that work with you, I might be talking to them about, have they heard anything that you've said about me? And come to find out, there's some jealousy there. And another train company that I'm a little closer with had not given this person the same opportunity. They had tried to work for them, and that might be playing a factor. I don't, I'll research it for a few hours. It'll be in the back of my mind. I don't spend much time on it. But yeah, that was kind of the deal. It was like, I probably ran into jealousy more than racism, and the only time you want to call it racism was more curiosity about who I am. For a white man's hobby, as many people call it, I've been given every opportunity anybody else would. I've been treated the same. If I haven't been treated the same, I didn't either realize it or contribute it to race.
Right.
I think it's more ignorance about social media, or refusal to work with somebody, because they think they can handle it without social media, and they can probably for the next 5 or 10 years. But Yeah, I haven't really ran across much racism in the hobby. I don't think I've ran into any racism in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's been not really existing. So
Yeah. My end of the spectrum, there's been, I can think of a couple of small instances, but I've had a couple of encounters. There's a local club, which the club that I was a part of was very welcoming. They loved having younger members join, and that's how I learned, a lot of the scenicking techniques, on how to, just how to lay track, all that stuff. One of my best friends, who's like a second father to me, his name's Guy. He the white guy, we got along great. He doesn't, in my opinion, the color's not, it's not a thing. He calls me his son. It's great. He's an awesome person. But the other club that was in town, it was basically older members. The youngest person in that club at the time, I think, might have been 28. And so I remember one time I went down there, just to the 28-year-old. His name is Steven. Yeah, Steven. That's right. He actually has a YouTube channel as well. He's great. Class 1 in scale model railroad. You guys, everybody watching, go check him out. He's a great guy. But he invited me down to run trains and layout as a guest one time. And middle of the session, they pulled Steven to the side. I said, Steven, who was your friend? What's he doing here? He's like, oh, that's just my friend Clint. He's just coming down to run trains. He's like, well, how long is he going to run for? What's he doing down here? It's just like, okay. I just ignored it. I didn't think much of it. I just kind of walked on, let it go. But the next day, some other club members that were there from our club that overheard that, they came to me and they apologized because they knew what it was. They knew what it was. But here's the thing. Like I said, these are stories. I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to share this stuff. I'm really glad we're doing this podcast. But I just want to stress this, and then we'll move on to something else. You'll meet all types of different people in the hobby, and there's going to be a million different reasons, regardless of what color you are, regardless of who you are. There's going to be a million different reasons for somebody not to like you. But more often than not, what it comes down to is really not your skin pigmentation. It's how many trains you have and how you get them. That's really what people tend to have an issue with. But did you want to add anything onto that?
Well, just to kind of close out the race discussion, a couple points. One, if you're multiracial like me, you can't just pick the thing that works the best for you. I've seen people that are, part black, part other things, and they decide to identify with the black, pretty much ignore everything else, and then call everything out. Now, the second thing I like to mention is an acronym YMMV. Your mileage may vary. Everybody's got different experiences. You are clearly African American. The start of this conversation was you asking me if I was, because you didn't know. When I had hair, when I had hair, I could not walk anywhere into a convenience store without getting asked a question because everybody thought I was Indian. I couldn't walk into a hospital because there's a lot of Indian population in the hospital because they thought I was Indian without saying, oh, dark. And then in California, I had an old Indian lady stare me down every time I walked with my wife, who was a Caucasian woman, blonde, blue eyes or green eyes, because she thought I married outside the race. And then when I talked to her son and asked why I was getting stared at so hard one time, and he was like, "Oh, she thinks you're Indian." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not." And then she was my best friend.
Yeah.
And racism, just that, for example, was everywhere. You can't nail it down most times unless you have first-hand accounts of what happened. So I just prefer to live in the world of I don't know what it is, and I'm just going to work harder, work around it, whatever. It's different for somebody that's completely obviously black is going to have different situations than me. Right. I acknowledge that, because if you get the wrong person that doesn't like black people, most of the time they can't figure out what I am. And the military is another thing. A lot of racism ties in well with patriotism, like Deep South patriotism, or
Southern pride.
Yeah, whatever the case is, or just the left wing tends to be like kind of racist in its own way, but it's like
Mhm.
we're trying to get everybody equal, so we're going to have an equal graduation for everybody. It's like, no, that's kind of segregating people.
Yeah.
And then the far right, deep down south, like back in the woods, some areas is usually very, very far right.
Hmm.
And that kind of ties in with patriotism. So the military has kind of uh, put a veil over it too. So
Hmm.
even after they find out I'm black, a lot of times they've already made a character decision, or I'm part black. They've already made a character decision. I actually had an argument with a racist on AOL years ago. It's like, well, you love the military? Well, yeah. I like went into a KKK like forum.
Oh shit.
You love the military? Well, yeah. Well, I'm part black and I'm in the military. Oh, and well, you think like if you're black, you should marry your own kind? Cool. What do I do? Because I have to find like a quarter Italian, quarter French, quarter black, quarter German now, or like how's that work? You know. So even my wife's mom, a little bit, very very deep south,
Mhm.
was kind of internally processing some of this stuff, and she's like, "Well, I just liked it better when everybody stayed to their own kind." She told my wife this in privacy.
Oh wow.
My wife's like, "What's he supposed to do?" So
Yeah. What's his kind?
yeah,
Like.
yeah. So I don't know. I kind of view it comical. I do not get mad about it. I get even about it, and that's kind of how I deal with things. If I find out somebody's jealous, dude, you're gonna know every time I spent a stupid amount of money. I'm gonna show you my cars and my house and this,
Petty.
that, and the other. I am going to drive you into the ground with your own jealousy. That's how I react to it. It's not, bragging to me because I wouldn't do it to
Right.
get that reaction. I think everything a chance me going through the military and getting through the military with some of the medical issues I've had, uh, chance that I even grew up decent with my mom dying at 11 months. There's a
Mhm.
chance that all of it could be gone in an instant.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't ever get arrogant about it. I will use it to troll people. And
Right.
with the race thing, if I find out somebody's racist, I would probably be more likely to pull up with a bucket of KFC and chew it right outside the heat or something. Because I'll turn it into just rubbing it in your face.
Right. But you know, I'm glad you said that. That honestly, that me and my friends, we used to we used to do dumb stuff like that too. Like we used to watch a lot of Dave Chappelle, but we used to really play into the race card sometimes too. Like we'd sneak like fried chicken into the movie theater and just acted, just
Yeah,
kids and shit. But
yeah,
James, I appreciate you being able to either answer some of these more difficult or non-train related questions, but I find this dialogue interesting. It's nice to have you on and have a mature conversation.
yeah.
You said the word house, so I want to talk about that for a moment. So recently you've been looking, for what, the last year you've been trying to find a house?
Yeah. So, and a good tie into your spouse relationship, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we started in March of 2020. I came out here a couple times from Nebraska, even with Bob. I think there's an N-scaler named Bob. He's the Bob's N-scale Man Cave.
Mm-hmm.
He helped me bring my stuff out here in a U-Haul, helped me box it up, stuff like that.
Did you need a second U-Haul just for the trains and another U-Haul for everything else?
Yeah, I actually weighed my trains, and between the trains I have here and the trains that are stored elsewhere, it's like literally a ton of trains. It's like
Oh wow.
4,000 pounds or something, whatever the ton is,
Sweet Lord.
or 5,000 pounds. So, but yeah, he helped me. We did have to weigh it because it was a military partial move of items. So
Mm-hmm.
that was just kind of a fun part of it. But he went and saw houses with me, and I think the realtor thought I was a gay man for the first like 3 months because I'm with this dude trying to find a house. And finally I was like, "Hey man, you don't think I'm gay, do you? Because I got a wife and kids back home." And the realtor's like, "Sure you do." But yeah, so started in March, but me and my wife had kind of not an argument, just kind of she doesn't put her foot down very often, and she was kind of
Mhm.
insistent that we didn't buy, which I still kind of rub in her face because my instincts were correct and the market blew up even more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did end up, if this house goes through, because we do have a house finally as of yesterday under contract. If this house goes through, we'll end up in the same neighborhood we wanted to be in anyway.
Oh, wow.
However, so we started in March, just a couple kind of feel visits. Told the realtor, hey man, this is the long game. We had a conversation. We decided to put it off till we moved here. Well, coronavirus delayed my pension for months, so I had no idea what my pension would be. Like I mentioned before, no idea whether I was going to work or not. Ended up getting my pension results the same day as I accepted the job, so it all kind of came together at once. And then we picked up looking in mid-October. And so we started looking in mid-October once I had a feel that I was going to be able to handle this job. But we're still looking at a range that we could go without like having the job.
So when you're looking for this piece of property, what things does it need to have? Because if I remember correctly on Facebook, you were saying that there were some things that you needed for your wife, and then of course you needed a good room for your trains as well. What are you kind of looking for?
I wish I had a list, because you would have seen. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It's a long list.
You're good.
Let's see.
I feel this is going to be wild. Also, while you're looking for that, I'll read some chats right here real quick. I want to give a shout out to a few people. Jeff, I see you in here, man. How you doing? Kyle, welcome back, sir. I see CSX Mad. How you doing, bro? Model Railroads and HOs. I saw your comment earlier, bro. I'll see here. I'll answer that question later. I'll have James and I'll answer. Maybe do a little Q&A if you guys have any questions for us. But yeah, I appreciate everybody coming in, tuning in, checking out the live stream. This is fan. I'm just really pleased to have James on it. We're just being gracious with this time and just really giving us some fantastic content. Guys, you should be taking notes from this gentleman. He's lived a fair amount of life, and there are things to be learned. That's why not every train podcast just has to stay on trains. There's things to learn from people in this hobby outside of model railroading techniques on how to make great trees and lay good track.
Yeah, it doesn't look like I can find it, but I do have most of it by memory. So we were looking for 5 bedrooms. Yeah, I don't have it. Let me get you back on the screen here so I can see. It was 5 bedrooms. Bath didn't really matter. Probably 3, I think, in general is what we're looking for. At least 5 bedrooms, 3 baths. Square footage was supposed to be, we decided, there wasn't a whole lot under 4,200 square feet we could deal with, so we just kind of threw that number in the list. A backyard, a flat backyard, a 3-car garage, because the convertible, that's still a thing. I'm probably going to get a different one eventually. Right. Let's see, the basement, the layout had to be, I think, 1,000 square feet, double, at least 2.5 times the size of my previous one, which was 400 square feet in a 400 square foot area. It was, we prefer gas. There was a laundry list, and the rule is if you can meet 80% of those things, then you're pretty much, you should go in on an offer.
Right.
And what else was there? Oh, neighborhood. My wife wanted trees in the neighborhood. She wanted not homes stacked up next to each other.
Yeah.
Might as well live downtown, and we were in a suburb. So good space between the homes. Walkable neighborhood, nice neighborhood, not crazy HOA fees. All these things. Purchase price obviously matters. You got a ceiling. Stuff like that. So that was all on this giant list. I was trying to look for it. It had probably 30 different items.
Wow.
This house, we've had 3 other offers, 2 like really close to full. We're talking like a 0.5% or 0.25% off of full offer. 1 completely full offer, got beat out on all 3 in different ways. One was a doctor out of state that just sniped me like while I was like scheduling the showing, and actually got through the showing and they signed the contract. So I got beat out 3 other times, and then this house literally checked off every box I had on that sheet. So I think it, hopefully it works out. It comes with stuff I really don't care about. I don't really care about a pool. The neighborhood has a pool.
Yeah.
I prefer kind of hanging out with neighbors at the pool. And it comes with the basement, though. We can use part of it as a layout, and I can have like a pretty good size layout. And then once the kids grow up and we're kind of older, I can then expand that and make it a monstrosity of a layout.
Nice.
So that was all the things on the list. So yeah, that's missing a few things, but there's a bunch.
So what advice would you give to someone, a young man like me, or some of my other subscribers? We've talked in the live streams in the past. We've said, a lot of us are still at home looking to buy a piece of property, looking to get our first house. What kind of advice would you give us for home ownership, purchasing a home, and maybe even if this is the right time to even purchase property? Because for me personally, I don't know if this is a really good market to try to find a home for me right now.
So everything is a guess, man. You never know what's going to happen. My best guess right now is we are on the back end of purchasing a home where it's advantageous to the buyer, even though it's a seller's market. So the reason I say advantageous for a buyer is we've seen about a 0.75% APR increase on average of interest rates. That's a lot of money when you start looking at a home and what your payments changing to. Still lower than I think my last interest rate was on a home. But in general, you want to buy in a buyer's market, and that's totally not what's happening right now. Only reason I'm buying right now is because I need to get out of here. I need to get a layout started. I need to get my kids back in the space they're used to, be able to have family back over, things that we can't do in a rental that is 2/3 the size of my previous home. So we ended up going, and the other thing I'd suggest is that 80% rule. If you can meet 80% of what you want, that's fine. This house goes over that. We're looking at 4,200 square feet as a minimum. This house is like 65 or 6,600 square feet. It's essentially a monstrosity. I'm not really a fan of that because you have to pay an electric bill and a water bill associated with that. But
yeah,
but it's it met every requirement. All I put was minimum. I didn't say maximum. So so use that as a guide to getting what you can. If you're looking to buy a home, I would suggest now. If you could put it off, or you're on the fence, or you just don't feel like you have everything right, you're going to want to wait. In general, 20% down is a rule. I personally would never fall under a situation where you do private mortgage insurance because you can put less than 20% down, but then you're paying a monthly payment just because you didn't.
Right.
And you can set yourself up kind of on the wrong side at the beginning. One of the first homes I bought, I probably went a little over my head, and it was causing some scrimping there for a while. So, you got to be careful and make sure it's well into your debt to income ratio, which is another thing. Dave Ramsey says 25% at a 15-year mortgage, and I follow that. But if you can't and you're still like needing a home, personally, I think it's okay to go up to about 30% or 28%, I'm sorry, on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at the rates that are going. So, and all your debt to income ratio is like how much money goes to, like, say I had a credit card that was $100 a month and I made $1,000 a month. My debt to income ratio is 10%,
Right.
So that's all it's saying. But that 36% is kind of the cap where the banks like to see it. 28 is really where anybody financially, stable should be. So you're going to want that after your home mortgage rate is figured out, your payment, and including your taxes and your homeowner association fees, anything related to it other than utilities.
All right. That's good, guys. You have no idea how important and useful this information. Well, some of you do. I know I've got a lot of younger subscribers. This is fantastic information, what James is sharing right now. I've been doing a lot of research over the last year and a half, trying to figure out what type of, how I was going to buy a house, what kind of things I was looking for. I'm still not entirely certain yet. I've actually decided, and this is an announcement I'll make here on the stream, I've actually decided I'm actually going to be moving out finally my parents' house, and I'm going to have a place of my own with a roommate, good friend of mine, and this will be my first branch out. But the goal is really to get a place of my own. And the only reason why I'm doing this now is it's a little less expensive than actually staying at home with my family. So I'll be able to save even more money to purchase a house. But I think you laid down some really good points as to, how to kind of keep yourself organized before purchasing a piece of property. What's your opinion? Let me ask you this. What's your opinion on doing a 30-year fixed mortgage and putting 20% down, just a flat 20%?
That's fine. I think Dave Ramsey takes it a bit far. Might be a little disconnected from the everyday man. I think it's fine because in that time that you're, where do you envision yourself in 5 or 10 years? Are you able to put more towards the mortgage? You could turn it into a 15-year mortgage, so it's going to have a little higher interest rate at 30, but you can turn it into a 15 or 20-year mortgage once you get a little more stable. So I think that's probably the furthest I'd push it, but 36% debt to income ratio, a 30-year fixed mortgage, and the interest rates you're seeing now is still safe in my opinion, but I don't make millions of dollars giving people financial advice like Dave.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's transition to the last couple of things here, and then I'll let you go. For someone who's looking to start a YouTube channel, who's wanting to do a train channel, maybe they've been doing it for a while, maybe they're just looking to get into it. What are some tips you could give them to help them grow their YouTube channel?
Well, the first thing I would suggest is try to do something that's not been done. That's probably but it's getting so hard. I mean, it's just like static, the amount of YouTube channels out there with trains right now. But trains have obviously been done before on YouTube, but what hasn't been covered well? What could do better, and then occasional attention grabbers. I do not like clickbait. I might have had a couple videos that might be clickbait-ish, but I'm not going to say, oh, I got ran over by a train, click this video, and then it's like me getting ran over by that Cardboard Thomas video type thing.
Right.
It's not my style, and it probably has cost me views, so I don't think you should be dishonest, though. I think you should find something unique, something funny, something different. Will be step one. Step two is get it out there. I still do it occasionally, but all the different Facebook groups with all different topics, but all model trains, share to get it's almost like an engine. You give it enough gas, it starts. The grip is not going to do the trick. And it's really hard. It's probably a lot harder now to start a YouTube channel than it was before with all the different channels out there. My buddy started one. I was on his podcast, and it's kind of like politics and everything in between. And although he's got a huge something way more mainstream than we do to deal with, not getting much traction because it's just, you got 20, 25 friends, but then it just kind of stays there.
Yeah. So one of the things I noticed looking back at some of your older content, like you seem to increase the frequency of the videos that you were pumping out. Like you were pumping out more content more consistently. How important does that play in like how the algorithm works or how your channel grows?
Well, just recently I've decided to scale back to like one video every 10 or 12 days is what I'm shooting for. But that does help because you're putting something out there, and you can look at it this way. Every video that you put out is like, there's a chance it's going to catch, there's a chance it's going to get big. Like I told you before, I don't really think in those numbers aspects much, but every video that's going out is going to get something. And then in terms of ad revenue, I mean, even if my videos only do a couple thousand views each, you do enough of them, it's going to add to more views, but right. I'm at the point where I'm still trying to norm to a corporate job. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, but I'm just gassed when I get home. I'm tired.
Yeah.
My last few years of the military, I had 7 or 8 assistants, and they all wanted to do all of my work because I was the next rank up, and they knew if they did my work and they put it on their performance reports, it would get promoted. I
Wow.
was like sitting there surfing the internet for half a day. So
Yeah.
so I'm still getting used to the pace of the job, but
Mhm.
it's still Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, so that doesn't hurt. Um, so that's causing me to slow down my videos. Plus, there's just so many reruns. How many times can you review an ES44 AC or an SD70 ACE or, you know, and if it's not that much different or it's a re-release, it's time to scale back from those a little bit and just do really unique items, or if a really unique paint scheme comes out, or something like that. But try to be a little more selective. I'm going to be, but the viewers really drive it. If I'm getting a lot of requests, I'm going to go out there and obtain that locomotive, whether it's buying it or not, and make sure I can meet their, because sometimes it just don't get done. It does not get done on YouTube if I don't do it still, so, or it's not done very well or at all.
So let me ask you this, because we're talking about the channel. We just talked about your house. So give me answer this question for me. What is like your dream train layout, and what kind of locomotives, motive power, railroad? What do you want to have for your layout moving forward? If you get this house, you get to start building your layout. Cousin's probably going to come over. Y'all going to be running trains together, having a good time. What do you want? What do you, James Wright, personally like to run for your model railroad?
Well, first, the layout itself, as much as double decker layouts are cool, I just do not have the carpentry skills or the electrical skills to think on that level. Helix, I don't know where to start. They've got kits. TracksideScenery.com just made like a Helix kit that's lightweight and all sorts of stuff, but it's just too much to worry about. So regardless of how much money or space I had, it would be a single deck layout. It would be modular, just because after I kick the bucket, which I most likely will, from eating too much of the Colonel's bucket before my wife, she's most likely going to live longer than I am, and she's going to be stuck dealing with it because she's a health nut.
Yeah.
5'7", 130 pounds.
Wow.
So she's probably going to get stuck dealing with it. So I'm still going to make it modular, no matter how much money or space I have.
Right.
The idea for this layout is not going to be my dream layout. To start, my dream layout would be Union Pacific as the predominant motive power on my layout on one end, with Norfolk Southern CSX on the other. UP is what was like my first love. NS and CSX is the area I live in now. And then all sorts of, you've probably seen in my reviews, most of that stuff I still have. So all sorts of like guest stuff, the time traveling Chesapeake in Ohio, from Broadway.
Hey.
That time traveled back to my layout, which this new layout's going to have wooden ties mostly, and then some areas are going to be concrete, which is still indicative of the railroads, where they're replacing big chunks of railroad with concrete. So it can be a modern layout, but that type of stuff, like the Chesapeake in Ohio, is going to be on the wooden ties, shot on the wooden ties for run-bys and videos. And then just a dream would be scaling down, selectively compressing the Cheyenne, Wyoming, Union Pacific steam shops. What's left of the roundhouse, the shops behind it. I've got a whole book on it in case I have the space. I do have the space, but it's probably going to be something that's later after the kids grow up. To expand that layout out into the finished area of that basement. There's huge rooms in that finished basement area that it could easily, possibly not even selectively compress that down. So,
wow. Okay.
Yep.
So, let me close out the layout topic with this. What are your give me your top 5 favorite trains that you like to run? There's locomotives.
Well, 3 of them are UP steam.
God bless you, James.
That's easy.
You're not just saying that because you're on a Steam channel right now, right?
No, it goes back to the first locomotive I saw, which was 844. First locomotive I saw with the new perspective of being a model railroader.
Right.
844, 3985, 4014. So that's the top three. And then I might go diesel, like modern UP.
Mhm.
And I would say modern NS, but it's really not a love. It's more of like that's where I live now.
Yeah.
So then it would be all the other Steam, Excursion or Museum, like the
Mhm.
Chesapeake and Ohio 490, the anything that's in a museum anywhere. It's not already in the UP Steam category, so big boys are out. But nickel or mainline or short line, I'm sorry, tourist line Steam. So 1225, 765, both locomotives that run. 765 was kind of my favorite because it's an Indiana locomotive.
Mhm.
One of my favorites, but the actual crew back years ago, this isn't reflective of the current crew. We're just jerks to rail fans and didn't treat people very good. Me and my cousin went to an open house and could openly hear them talk about how they wanted to, annoy the rail fans with this, or they hated rail fans, or this that, and spit out the cab, and hopefully it hits a rail fan in the face. And
Holy crap, dude.
so we were not impressed. So that kind of soured that, but
Why? That's what they're out there for. I don't.
Oh,
I don't
611 would be the other one. Norfolk
mm.
611. So
Yeah, I remember you had the Fire Up 611 campaign on your channel for a little bit back before they got it running again. So nice, man.
yeah.
Last thing, closing us out here. What advice would you? Well, before I ask this question, let me preface it by this. I've noticed a lot of people in the hobby. They make trains their entire life. Like that's their whole being. That's just kind of who they are. What advice would you give to someone who maybe is putting trains too high on the pedestal? What would you say to that person? What advice would you give? Just good life advice.
Well, I would just say don't get anything too much of anything is a bad thing, as the saying goes. So you can't let it envelop your life. I think most importantly in life, if you don't have kids, then you need to. Family is most important. Religious stances, if you have them, are very important.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably put that at the top in my life
Mm-hmm.
personally, even though I don't do too well in it. But that, those should be the priorities. And then obviously making a living, being productive, making a positive, outcome for the people around you, being positive for the people around you, no matter, what it takes, how much you get beaten down. I've done giveaways where people are very, very communicative with me until they get the product, and then I don't even hear a thank you. Time and time again, and it has kind of stifled some of the giveaways, but you got to shake it off. I've worked for people, or I'm sorry, I've had people work for me that I was actively defending, trying to get them out of trouble, and they were actively in the role of backstabbing me. So you got to keep on, and no matter what, try to be that positive force in your little bubble, wherever it is and whoever it involves. And then if you do have family and kids, make your kids a big priority, which I still, struggle with from time to time, but make sure that you're there. I think statistically, if you have a father figure and a mother figure in a home, you're going to set your kid up for more statistical success than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important. If you have kids, don't ignore them. Don't put trains ahead of everything. So yeah, that's kind of my take. I hardly ever film reviews on Saturdays. I'm thinking about doing one today since I'm already up here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add it to the end of my workday and still be on the couch, watching TV or hanging out with the kids. We went and drove remote control boats on the lake behind our rental house here
Mm-hmm.
yesterday. So I'm still there, maybe
Yeah.
not engaged as like the 1950s video or videos where the father's playing chess with the, checkers with the kid all night, but we're around each other and we're enjoying each other's company.
Right.
So
Very nice.
that's more important. Don't let your trains have a place, but in the pie chart of life, they got to be like 10% or less. It's got to be other things. And people that have this amazing passion. Delay and Block Productions, Drayton Blackgrove. He's got a big YouTube channel. He works for Scale Trains. He has a YouTube channel, and he likes models. That's going to be a bigger part of the pie chart, and that's fine. But he has a good family life. Very, he talks often of his grandparents, I think, which have recently passed. But there was still a mix, even though your job is trains, your YouTube channel's trains, and your hobby is trains. There's still a mix with him. So, just don't let it envelop your life, because it can. Anything can, good or bad. Luckily it's not as bad as alcohol, pornography, drugs, smoking, vaping, any of that. But it can be just as, addicting if you just dive into the world all day, every day.
All right. Very nice, man. One last thing I want to bring up real quick. Someone asked us a question. I promised I would bring it up. Let me see if I can pull it up on here. It says, what do you guys think about buying models as compared to building models? It's easy to buy a whole train ready to run, but I wonder if people value a model they've put work into more. I'll let you go ahead and answer that first.
So I never grew up, as in the adult life of hobby, with doing that much, because like I said, the blue box kits were on their way out. My personal philosophy is, I do have a little more ownership and stuff I do, because I have done some things with some models, but it doesn't play a major part. I look at the stuff that's ready to buy as a gateway for me to spend more time on scenery, playing track, getting that layout up and running, and I use that as extra time saved. Plus, I'm just not a good modeler. I mean, I got stinky hands. I don't know if I could mount a firecracker antenna on a cab roof without it coming off wonky looking or big glue spot or something. So why not pay a little extra or a lot extra and have people do it for you, and then use that time for scenery and stuff that's got a little more dexterity going on. Trees are a lot bigger than firecracker antennas. So that's where I spend my time. But you do get a sense of ownership, and it is a skill that should be revered and done if you have the time.
I will say this from my perspective. It's a building. If we're talking about building models, that, like as James was saying, there's a lot of work and a lot of time that's invested into doing that. Just recently, I bought a Overland Models New York Central H10A, and I had to put DCC and sound it myself. It was a month-long process of getting all the parts, all the pieces together, doing the research on how to properly wire the decoder. And someone who's electrically illiterate, such as myself, my grandfather taught me certain things growing up, but there's a lot of stuff that I forgot, so I had to go back and refresh and also understand what to do with the decoder. And the first week I had all the parts, I ended up frying the decoder, had to take the time to send it back. I had to buy a new one, wait for that one to come in. And then once I got a new decoder, it took me another 2 days. Like I would get off work at 3:00 and work till midnight, 2 nights in a row, working on this train and still not getting it to work. The third day, I did, in about a couple hours, I did get it to work, and I was like, finally, yes. Like there is a sense of accomplishment and achievement and pride that comes with that. But at the same time, I tell my mom, like, you know what, the amount of time that I wasted on this, like I probably could have just paid somebody to go in and install the decoder for me. And I could have done other things. Like there were other projects that I wanted to work on. And then of course, James is like, yeah, we can do the podcast this week. And I'm like, God damn it. No, now I got it. I got to get that ready to go. So, but of course, I was more than happy to do that. But my point is this, guys. Like, and this ties into the last question that I asked James. So I'm kind of glad that we answered this question. Is that it depends on how much time you really want to invest in the hobby. For me personally, there are things in my life right now that are a little bit more important than trains. That's why even like on this channel, you didn't see me upload content consistently for a while, just because there's so much other stuff in my life going on. And I think that, like James was saying, family, well, before that, God, family, making an income, those things have to come first before your hobby. Never forget the priorities of life. there's a time and a place for trains. It ties into a lot of people's childhoods. There's an emotional attachment there because of family members that may not be there anymore that you remember every time you pick up a locomotive. And there's always a time and a special place for that. But keep it. I think that for people who want to just buy a model ready to run, ready to go, I think that's fantastic. But for the people that take the time to build a model, to craft a model, to put sound in it, detail it, I think my hat's off to them and kudos to them. God bless them that they have the time that they can put into doing things like that. But for me, either way, man, just depends on how much time you want to invest into it. So at any rate, James, do you have anything you would like to say? Any projects coming up? Anything down the pipeline that you wanted to bring up before we wrap this thing up?
No, I'll be trying to diversify my channel a little more so it's not so mundane with reviews, but with this house process that might be delayed. Tried offering some airtime to small vendors and didn't really get a large response with that, so that's kind of delayed. So you'll probably just be seeing reviews. Doing Broadway Limited in-scale aces. I'm doing Ather and Genesis. What was it they just put out? ST60E Triclops. Those will be coming down the pipe. I used to really focus on timely reviews, getting those out quickly, and life just took over, man, and it's a little slower than normal, and it has been for a while, even before I retired, getting ready to retire from the military. So it's just that's kind of the plan, is just more reviews and maybe some rail fanning or something to pepper in there to mix it up. Then I'll be showing the behind the scenes of walk into the layout room for the first time with a camera and stuff like that. Wherever I end up, even if this house doesn't work out, because there are still hurdles with inspections and appraisals and all that jazz.
Right.
But overall, one other thing I wanted to mention about you talking about kit bashing is, it took you a long time to go through that. But it is good to go through it because, now you know how.
Right.
So you always have that. Not like riding a bike. You might have to practice a little bit, but if you took detailed notes, you'll know how. And that's a very valuable thing. So I wouldn't want you to discount that either.
Right.
Because paying people to do stuff's cool when it's possible, but it may not always be possible, and then you can't relate when somebody's talking about wiring. I'm still terrible. I fried a G-scale soundtracks decoder, which was color coded and very easy to do. So, it's a good experience to go through that. But that's kind of all I have, other than saying thank you for having me on, and it's been great talking with you.
James, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to talk to me and being on the podcast. I want to leave off with this. You posted a video on your Facebook asking if we woke up tomorrow and had your channel, what's something that we'd like to, something what we would do with it. I did want to say this to you. One thing I think that'd be really awesome for you to do is a podcast of your own. I would really love a James Wright, a Jlwii2000 podcast. I think that would be fantastic. It's for me, it's a great outlet just to talk to someone in the hobby who, we share in, it's a fellowship in a way. We share the same interest in a fantastic hobby with fantastic people, but maybe something for you to consider for the future once life kind of calms down for you out after you get the house and everything situated. But man.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can film a review in about an hour. Podcast a little more involved, but you don't have to edit. I think with StreamYard you can just hit a button. Maybe I can't remember.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I've had Jim Wiggin of Athern on one just kind of chat, and that's when I kind of figured out how to use StreamYard, so I could go back and do that again.
Yeah, very nice.
With actual people, not just manufacturers, but people in the hobby. So.
Right. Well, I'm going to end the stream there. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to give James a fantastic round of applause for being such an amazing guest today. James, thank you, sir. It's an honor and a privilege to have you on. I want to thank everybody that tuned into the live stream today. I'm not sure if I'm going to do one next week. Like I said, I am moving out of my house, so I'm not buying one like James is. However, I do plan on not being here anymore, so the scenery behind me will change. It's going to be a new adventure for me in my life personally. I'm looking forward to it. And I want to thank everybody that's been subscribed to me over the years and giving me encouragement or helped me out along the way, kind of get to where I'm at. We're entering the next stage of my life. So thank you all. And once again, thank you, James, for being on with me today. And we'll catch y'all down the road. God bless everybody.